Three. Hello, everybody. It's Laura Eisenhower. I am joined today by my good friend George H. Lewis, master artist, astrologer, author. It's so great to be with you. Hello,
Yeah.
George.
Hi, dear. It's great to see you again. We've both been on the road, so it's always nice to sort of get together, ideally for these weekly, chats. It's just lovely,
Especially on
especially today.
an eclipse. We have a total lunar eclipse today. This is when the moon is completely within the shadow of the earth. And this particular eclipse will appear reddish orange in color. It'll last for more than 3 hours. And it's starting at 11:26 p.m. Pacific time today. And the actual eclipse lasts for about an hour. And, it's a south node eclipse. And the nodes being activated, south node Virgo, uh, we're going to, talk about and the power of eclipses. The power of eclipses lasts for about 6 months. So we'll also talk about the different aspects that other planets are making to this eclipse. And yeah, wow. Okay, what are your thoughts, George, on this special total lunar eclipse day?
I mean, I think what makes this particular eclipse unique is a number of things. Firstly, it's not just the lunar eclipse, in Virgo opposite the pile up in Pisces. We do have this Neptune North Node Saturn thing going on as well. So it can be very dreamy with Neptune. It can also be very grounding with Saturn. But I definitely am seeing in the collective an element of anxiety and stress, which is that Saturnian quality coming in. And I just want to say, let's use Saturn as support, as grounded architectural foundation. Let's put some roots out. Just as I said to you coming on an air here, my fingers were in the soil. I was grounding. I was making the soil to put some seeds down here in North Carolina to grow some crops. And I think we have to activate that Saturnian quality in our creativity to activate the Piscean archetype.
Totally. Yeah, Saturn, we talked about quite a bit. Saturn in Pisces, you know, how can we apply spiritual wisdom in practical ways? The anchoring of spiritual energy into the physical plane makes it a way of life, not just something uh we connect with when we pray or go to church for some. It's a way of life, right? So, Saturn being connected to the North Node, Neptune, and then the South Node, Virgo, with that being an Earth sign, going
Yes.
into this Neptune with the Saturn, it's like anchoring heaven on earth, really, but
Yeah.
doing it individually. Like, what does that look like for each individual? Are you manifesting your dreams? Has something gotten in there that is preventing you from actualizing the visions that you hold for yourself, the goals that you have? And I think the people that have a calling to do healing centers, to maybe leave their career and go explore and go to sacred sites and maybe explore like plant medicines. I mean, this is very much the Neptune energy. And what's fascinating to me is when you look at the shadow side of all the planets, the shadow side of Neptune or the 12th house, even though this is not about the 12th house, but Neptune, the ruler of the 12th house, it also rules hospitals and prisons. So it just goes to show that if we don't give ourselves the time to embrace the multidimensional, the exploration of our dreams, and the unseen realms and the unconscious, people go mad and they end up sick in a hospital or they end up in prison. And society just doesn't give us enough opportunity to really explore um, these levels of ourself, except for through art and music is the only real channel. So how can we integrate it into a physical lifestyle is what this nodal axis is asking us to do.
Yeah. Also, I think because just to remind people that the moon is in Virgo, so that means it's on the south node. So we're dealing with things like the law of the gut, the microbiome, health-related issues, and the old south node was fake science, fake understanding of the microbiome, or a misunderstanding or a non-understanding. And think of people like Zach Bush and many people teaching us more about really the reality of our biological condition and the way we're structured. It's releasing those old paradigms which are basically fake about how we really exist. And by leaning into the Neptunian, as you say, by understanding the spiritual connection, then we reboot the South Node, and suddenly the Virgo health becomes exponentially supportive as opposed to destructive. And I think with all this fire energy coming in, because the Sun, of course, is trining Mars in Cancer, and it's now going direct, isn't it? We're definitely going to see an activation of that understanding and an increase, an exponential speeding up of our understanding of our reality, but in particular of our health and how spirituality plays a physical point. It contributes to our physical wellness. It's not something separate that we can do on a Saturday morning. We just sort of like an add-on. The spirituality is an integral part of who we are. It's that reconnection, North Node Pisces, to spirit. So the lunar eclipse in Virgo, and then the sun obviously in Pisces, opposition, is like a reconnection to our soul contract, a reconnection to our higher self.
Oh gosh, yes. Thank you for clarifying that so well. Yeah, I mean, the gut biome is so much the Virgo energy because, when Saturn is in its inverted expression, or when people are experiencing it in that way, that constriction, really upsets the stomach. People carry a lot of stress, in the stomach area. When we look at like gut lining or a leaky gut, or just that part of our being, when we release that and those inversions to move Saturn into the higher octave of self-mastery, there's just this ease that comes in, and, the integration of, that Neptune energy is just the epigenetics of where our thought forms can reach into all that is possible, instead of the limitations that we carry around from ancestral patterns, societal programmings, and all the different things that infect that Neptune energy and keep us in a very low level of experience.
Yes.
And
One
so
thing,
it's really an opportunity of purification and looking at our health. Absolutely.
Laura, one thing that's just leapt out at me, which I never really shared before, but it's never occurred to me, is that Neptune in the natal chart of the United States, July 4th, 1776, Neptune's 22 degrees Virgo. So one could make a case quite clearly that there's been some delusion in the first iteration of the United States First Republic when it comes to the gut, the biome, the understanding of the Virgo, Neptune, where this time round we're going to activate the Neptune into that higher realm of consciousness, which is inspiration, through the great luminaries like Zach Bush about how everything starts in the gut. Not everything, but a large part of our existence. And if we get that right, we can really, really be healthy souls
Right.
incarnate.
Right. It's called the second brain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the link between just the neurotransmitters in our brain, our gut health, Mercury that rules Virgo, the way we talk to our bodies, and that's the whole idea of epigenetics. What genes are we switching on? What thoughts are activating, things within our body. And if it's operating under a program, the body suffers. So this is such a huge opportunity for this, greater awakening by noticing what your physical body is trying to tell you and moving it into a trajectory that is not based in the dependency bond on the medical industry that kind of exploits our amnesia and our vulnerabilities. Not to say all of it is negative. There's very good doctors and well-intentioned people in those fields, but what is true healing is to get to know thyself and what's hiding in the unconscious, and bringing life to that, and going on that exploration into just the unconscious realms lights up, that we're
Yep.
multidimensional beings.
It's interesting you mentioned Mercury because, of course, Mercury is exalted in Aquarius. And I was listening to Barbara Marcinek the other day, and she was talking about how our minds are under siege. And it's not only a battle for the mind, it's a battle of the soul. And this is the age of Pisces, from which we are emerging. And that whole agenda, we all know it, and all your subscribers know this better than anyone else, is the depopulation agenda, leaning into the infertility and falling deeper under the spells, Pisces, of a manipulated consciousness of control, inverted Saturn. But these belief systems, by now us understanding that they've been deliberately imposed upon us and we've been targeted, that's kind of the North Node in Pisces with Saturn, is we are beginning to ground ourselves in a real knowing of what's been going on, who's who are the perpetrators. None of us really. I mean, unless you were, David Icke or Wilcock or whatever, knew that the World Economic Forum 25 years ago had this agenda, or the Bilderberg Group. Very few people did. I certainly didn't, and my awakening has only been really since 2016, by and large. And I think the North Node in Pisces now, with all this Piscean energy, is really a sort of sense of, my gosh, there's an epiphany. And we release, because don't we, with the lunar eclipses, it's about the releasing the old. There's a sense of, we lean into the sun, Saturn, Piscean to take on the spiritual, but it's also because of the North Node in Virgo, South Node in Virgo, it's releasing all that fake science.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, eclipses really shake everything up. So, you know, can Saturn be where we have boundaries, where we have discernment, where we are strong and anchored in our self knowingness, where we trust our intuition with all that Neptune energy, we're going to be really, really tuned in. So if something doesn't feel right, if some outer authority is telling you something that doesn't feel right, is this your opportunity to say, no, I'm going to go elsewhere. I'm going to follow
Yes.
my gut instinct, right? That's very Virgo. Gut instinct. It's connected to the North Node Pisces, South Node Virgo, is
Totally.
trusting
Totally.
the gut, trusting your instincts, trusting that inner voice. Where's Mercury been sabotaged to where
Mm.
your internal dialogue is not coming from you? It's coming from what was conditioned into you, what was indoctrinated into you. And the thing is, it goes back to ancestral patterns. It's passed down in our genetic code. So we're actually healing genetic damage that has fallen into unconsciousness, because when the body has physical symptoms, there's something unconscious that hasn't been unlocked. Now it's a physical symptom, so we just label it, but we don't dig deep into understanding there was a thought form or a belief system behind that physical symptom that's not in alignment, that needs to be dismantled and realigned with truth, with source. So
Yeah.
that's, the nature of healing. And it's wonderful because Uranus is going to be making harmonious aspects. So this will really help with, the bursts of inspiration and insight and downloads and epiphanies that will really help to, break the bonds with inverted Saturn, to redirect it into more self-mastery, and the strength to not worry about what other people think, the strength to be able to look at that outer authority and say, I do not comply, I do not consent. I'm trusting myself on this. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I mean, I was also reflecting that Neptune, it's been in Pisces for now 15, 16 years. And in a way, in the last 15, 16 years, on one side of the equation, the confusion's never been greater for people. I mean, even for people who are awake, it's been very intense, very Neptunian the last 15, 16 years, because Neptune in the modern rules Pisces. But Neptune is going to move into Aries within a matter of months. And I suspect the clarity is going to come, the reality check, especially with Saturn joining, is going to be huge in the coming months. And I think for those who have done the spiritual work, or I should say are doing it, because it never stopped, before enlightenment, carry wood, carry water, chop wood. After enlightenment, do the same. I think the interesting thing is, what is it called? The chickens are coming home to roost. Is I think there's going to be a huge oh high epiphany moment once we move more into the fire air part of the zodiac calendar, which is in a matter of months. And that Neptunian energy, which has created so much confusion and depression on the one hand, has also created this amazing, imaginative, creative, psychedelic plant medicine, as you mentioned, connection to source. And so, in that sense, we always have to be working with a positive expression of the archetype as much as we can. And that's really about radical cosmic creativity, the Neptune North Node.
Totally. The creative imagination is totally
Yes.
Neptune. And the depression can really come from feeling that something you want is not possible. It's that
Yeah.
soul longing that isn't being quenched. A lack of maybe feeling, fulfillment, or, the heaviness of Saturn. I mean, that is the heavy density, where there's limitation. So when we shift that and realize reality is fluid, it's not fixed to what um, is determined by the information we hear. It's what we do with the information and how we're creative with it. So say somebody gets a bad diagnosis, a heavy Saturn, right? Or some reality check that is incredibly uncomfortable that you can't really change, but yes, you can. The way you perceive it, the way you work with it, what you can do with it, and how this can begin to open us up to opportunity. Because to me, we upgrade in the face of adversity. This is what the awakening is all about, is that we're faced with challenge in order to unlock the treasure chest, to see all that is dormant that can come to life, which is that exploration of Neptune, versus the limitation that has put a lid on our greater potential, where somebody else is leading the trajectory of where your life path is going, when it's in the doctor's hands, when it's in somebody else's hands other than your own. And this is where we break the control system and control matrix. And it comes down to the micro. Virgo is very much about our physiology, our physical lifestyle, our everyday habits, our work and routine. And that's where we begin to dismantle it, is in every moment, from the minute we wake up to the minute we go to sleep, and all throughout, our dream analysis too. Where are we still bound to some level of enslavement, and where can we set ourselves free? So one of the things that a lot of people are breaking is the addiction matrix. Neptune in
Yep.
its lower aspects is definitely self-undoing and addiction, and Saturn can make it a lot harder when you feel stuck, trapped, enslaved, confused. And this is where liberation is. And talk to us more about that, because I love that you said the
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, with Saturn conjunct the Sun, it's very intense, but reality is brought into focus. So when we have conscious, I always think of Carl Jung's statement: when we make conscious the unconscious, we no longer call it fate. So in a sense, when we bring something into focus, and we're very Saturnian in a positive sense about it, we put roots down into this area of activity. We understand that health and spirituality aren't separate, but the bidirectional co-creative entities, and they form something part of a greater whole. So on a personal level, it's going to bring into focus, isn't it, anything that is toxic or addictive. And addiction comes in many shapes and sizes. Of course, the obvious one is alcoholic or drug addictions, but obviously, if you could be addicted to going to the gym 7, 8 days a week, and I mean 8 days a week. There's an addiction. You still have to figure out what's the balance. So we're structuring creativity here. But I also feel there's a kind of a turning point here in the sense with the Neptune, because if you look at it in terms of, say, singularity, and the inverted matrix loves this, because the inverted matrix of singularity is the negative entities on this planet, have promoted this concept of singularity, which is really the merging of human with machine. And that's the negative Piscean and archetypally Aquarian manifestation. But on the positive, it's knowing that we are biological individual human beings, and we can merge with the collective consciousness and the collective higher self, the galactic family. And I think that's something which is really exciting to explore, right? Is the positive side of that singularity. We're still individual sovereigns within a collective, singular, beautiful cosmic family.
That's beautiful.
Do you
Yeah.
want
So
you want to explore more on that? I mean, I'm curious because I think in some ways it's understanding that everything's always inverted. So, there's always a truth to the negative, but they've flipped it around. We have to see that flip and then reappoint it. It's like 666 isn't inherently evil, it's carbon. Maybe we're turning carbon into crystalline, which is obviously 666, invert it's 999, thinking Tesla technology and zero-point energy. I just feel there's something about understanding the inversion, which we have to focus on in this North Node eclipse season.
absolutely. And that's where we redirect the energy. And when we redirect the energy, we notice synchronicities that support our alignment to our higher self, to source energy, to cosmic and natural law, versus this duality imbalance that is engineered. And an
Yes.
engineered reality is not based in synchronicity. It's based in, vampirism and feeling dependent upon. And this is what we see, with people in relationship. When you're with an abuser or a narcissist,
Mm.
uh,
Mm.
or you're in a codependency bond because of a
Yeah.
trauma wound that you continually enable with each other, or maybe a person that you have an addiction
Yeah.
compatibility with,
I
and
mean, it's so true. I mean, I have Neptune in the fifth house. I mean, Neptune, wherever you've got it, is the great deceiver when it's operating at a lower frequency. So, wherever Neptune's prominent in your chart, you should have a look at it. I mean, for me, it's in my house of creativity. So on a good day, I'm pretty creative. On a bad day, I'm totally self-deceptive.
oh my gosh, I have Neptune right on my ascendant. Ugh.
Well, yeah, but that means you embody, we see you as this visionary mystic, which is what you are, but that what comes with it can be some self denial, self-sabotage, or whatever the Neptune. Here's the thing is, all of us, I think you're on mute, Laura,
Oh
darling.
yeah, no, I've experienced the whole spectrum of.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the whole point. I've experienced the whole spectrum in the fifth house. Tommy's probably experienced it in the 10th house. Johnny's done it in the fourth. It's
I love it. Totally. And it's so great to know. It's really great to know, where these energies are, influencing you. So what a powerful time this is with the sun, um, Pisces, North Node, Moon, Virgo, South Node activation, really reflecting upon what our body is telling us and moving into all that is possible to begin to truly heal and purify all thought forms, all negative self-talk, all
Yeah.
programmings, all ancestral patterns that are limiting our capacity to really thrive in these times.
Can I also mention a little bit on the mundane quickly, just to do with the collective and where the eclipse is affecting people on the planet Earth? I just think it's interesting that with this great lunar eclipse and its totality here over the Americas, and again, it's interesting that the Gulf of Mexico has been renamed the Gulf of America. To me, just geographically, that makes sense. Now, let me just explain why. There are many parts to the Americas. We have North America, Central America, South America, and within North America, we have what is still known as the country of Canada, which has been under the British rule really until it's going to stop at some point, and that's I'm with others tapping into a prophetic vision. And then you've got the United States of America, and then you've got the country known as Mexico. And what I think is interesting with totality is really going over the United States, Mexico, Canadian sector. So we are going to see a big focal, and there's greater angularity, which is 90 degrees, and that means potency over this part. And so the focal point with this lunar eclipse is on the US, is on Canada, is on Mexico. So I think we're going to see some very big shifts, and we're already starting to see it, and releasings of the old. And DOGE, the Department for Government Efficiency, is part of that focal point of shining light on the utter corruption of the system. And Uranus is conjoined the midheaven here in the collective understanding of the mundane chart of the United States and where this lunar cycle, this lunar eclipse is going over. So the Uranian energy is very powerful for how we see the United States leading the world. I think also with other countries, and Russia's one of them, into a new way of being.
Oh, wow. That's so incredible. Thank you for that. Great. Any final thoughts before we go?
Well, gosh, I just think, like we always say, you and I, get into your creativity, stay the witness, stay the observer. It's a crazy, bumpy world out there. Even non-legacy media, there's so much information. It's very Neptunian. We all have our sense of reality. At the end of the day, none of us fully know what's going on out there on a 3D level because it's so amorphous. It's very Neptunian. Get back into the soil, into nature, into your own creativity. And that's how we change the world by changing ourselves from the inside out.
Beautiful. That's such a great way to close. And that's it right there. Oh, man. There's no fixed reality except for the one that you determine within yourself because you're the manifester and creator of your own world. And with that Mercury, it's what we speak into existence. It's what we speak to ourselves. It's what we wish to create. And that's why there's been mind control and social engineering and indoctrination, because they know that's the most powerful part of ourselves to capture and siphon and harvest, to engineer artificial timelines. And that relationship or dependency bond, cut the cords now and embrace your true divine nature, everybody.
Amen to that. Well done. Thanks, Laura.
Awesome. Thank you so much, George. Great to see you. Take care,
See you.
everybody. Happy eclipse.